Hello and welcome to the penultimate seminar from this series within the Meet Asilia virtual trade show. My name is John Baumann. I'm the commercial project manager here at Asilia, and today I am joined by Brandon Kemp, our Southern Tanzania country director. He's currently in Arusha, so if we do encounter any potential Wi-Fi issues, please bear with us and we'll keep going as best we can. We're going to be looking at the Usangu Wetlands in Ruaha today, where we are developing a new conservation initiative. Please feel free to ask any questions using the Q&A box, and we will do our best to answer as many as possible after Brandon's talk. If we do not get through all the questions, we will get back to you with an answer after the seminar. The seminar is being recorded and a link will be made available to you. So without further ado, let me hand over to our master of all things Southern Tanzania, Brandon Kemp.
Hi, thanks very much, John. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
John, can you guys hear me?
Yeah, I can. Go ahead.
Hello.
There we go, Brandon.
Hello,
I can hear you now.
Can you guys hear me? Okay, good. Sorry about the short delay there. Hello, everybody. Thank you very much for taking the time to listen in to what I believe is a very fascinating project that we've embarked on, and certainly I think something for the future. So I'll kick straight into it. Where's my...
Brandon, you're on mute.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, there we go. Thanks.
Okay. Sorry for that. Having a few technical difficulties here. Yeah, so just to talk about sort of Southern Tanzania in general, I'm sure a lot of you know about the Selous Game Reserve, and in particular, this talk is focusing on Ruaha, where we do have our normal commercial operations in the form of Jabali Ridge and the private house, as well as Kwihala. And then more recently developing down into the Usangu area, which I'm going to show you on the next slide here. John, I'm battling a little bit to change.
You're on mute again, Brandon.
Sorry, guys.
Yeah. No, still on mute. Okay.
Sorry, John, I'm frozen. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you, and it looks like the slides are changing.
Okay. Sorry about that. There's sort of some glitching going on here, and possibly something to do with the reliability of the internet. Yeah, so I don't know if anyone heard, but we're just sort of focusing on Southern Tanzania and where we are and our present business in the form of Ruaha Selous in the what is now the Ruaha National Park, and of course Ruaha National Park, where we have Kwihala, Jabali Ridge, and also the Jabali private house, and that is the area in Ruaha where we are starting to focus on Usangu. So there's a bit more detail on, let's say, the lay of the land. You can see up towards the Ikuka escarpment where Kwihala and Jabali Ridge is. And if you come sort of down that map past Jongamero, some of you folks might know Jongamero, and then past that, further out on the way to the Usangu Wetlands, as you can see from that map. You know, Ruaha is one of the key parks in Tanzania, and certainly for lion populations of the world, one of the big leaders in terms of having around 10% of the estimated population of wild lions in Africa. So, as you can see, the Usangu is a vast piece of wilderness. It was a hunting reserve which was incorporated into the park between the years of sort of 2006. And what happened is they went in and they got rid of sort of all the cattle and rice farming that was happening in the area, and then never really went back there. And when we were sort of looking around to see, you know, how can we diversify our approach and supporting more wilderness in southern Tanzania, obviously a wetland is always something of significance. Internationally, wetlands are threatened, and so we focused our eyes on that. And then also just to talk about why southern Tanzania. So if you look at that next slide over there, the green are national parks and the yellows are hunting reserves or wildlife management areas. And you can see very quickly that southern Tanzania ends up at about 50% protected land, and obviously under threat as well. It's not like the Serengeti, which is very well known and very well visited. As an example, the Kruger National Park, which is considerably smaller than Ruaha, has somewhere in the region of 2 million visitors per year. And at this stage in Ruaha, we only have 15,000. So that became one of our focuses, was to see how we could do more in the big, let's say, the last intact savannas left in Africa, which you find mostly in southern Tanzania. There to focus on where Usangu is, it's that red block in the middle, obviously, and that is the Usangu Game Reserve, which was incorporated in the park. It's about 6,000 square kilometers, which I think is 6 million hectares, something like that. So it's a considerable chunk of land, about 1/3 of the Kruger Park. If you look at Tanzania in general, again, we spoke a little bit about just how much land there is available. And of the 22 million hectares that is available in Tanzania, about 70% of this fits in southern Tanzania. So roughly 160 million hectares in total. And you can see this area is about 80 times the size of the Kruger National Park. And it's an area under threat. When these parks don't contribute good revenues to the government, they kind of sort of become problem areas in a way. And obviously the significance of the largeness of these areas is massive to the overall protection of wildlife, particularly in lion numbers, elephant numbers within the Tanzania context. These are very great sort of safe havens or breeding grounds. The key thing on this slide, I think, is to point out the lack of ability to protect such a large area. There are only, I think, 5 anti-poaching areas in a place that is about 80 times the size of the Kruger National Park. So it's an area that is sensitive and needs as much help as it can get. Just a slide to point out the sort of larger lion populations left in Africa. And if you have a look at the Selous Ruaha context, those are all areas with 2,000 plus lions. And so a significant chunk of the world's lions sit in southern Tanzania. So just a little bit of a zoom in onto exactly where we are operating. So the wetland is basically where the Great Ruaha River starts, in essence, coming off the highlands of the Iringa area. And we have access to all 6,000 square kilometers, and we are going to be one small camp of 4 tents. So if you really are looking for a wilderness experience, I don't think you get more kind of true wilderness than the area that we are using as our study site. Another point of interest is the Majimoto springs. These are amazing hot springs that it's usually where we go and do our afternoon shower with our guests, and you can actually swim in a little offshoot of the Ruaha River in some hot water. It's pretty cool. Okay, so what do we try and do there? So one of the things that you sort of find is, particularly in a hunting area, is the ability, hunters don't particularly take notice of, let's say, the smaller stuff, so the birds, the smaller mammals, trees, and all of that kind of thing. So we realized that perhaps there was very little research done, in fact, none at all, in this area. So we branched out to go and approach the Tanzanian Wildlife Research Institute and offered to sponsor a full biodiversity audit of this area. Obviously, this is all with the intention of doing great research work, but also with the intention of testing the area out for its tourism potential. So we started off this biodiversity audit towards the end of 2018. And sort of obviously one of the main focuses as well was working out animal movement, particularly lions. Do they go out of the park into the village? Wild dogs as well are on our list. and just to get an idea of the movement of things like roan and sable seasonally in and out of the wetland, and also to try and understand why topi only occur in Usangu. So they don't occur anywhere else in Ruaha, but they're only in that part of the Ruaha National Park. So some very interesting kind of dynamic keystone animals that we set out to try and get a better understanding of. And of course, again, just to reiterate that this is all with the idea of implementing a tourism model down the line to help a sustainable approach to protecting this area. So it's a 7,000 square kilometer uninterrupted wilderness, really incredible, and a blank slate, if you like. You know, we've just put our first road in there. So up until that point, there were no roads. The patrolling from TANAPA is extremely infrequent. And so, you know, I can't really remember the last sort of place where you had a blank canvas to start a project on from scratch. And obviously through our support work with both TANAPA and TAWIRI in a public-private partnership, we've been able to engage in this area. And in the sort of 5 years since we first visited it, the animal numbers have increased considerably. And, you know, in my experience from what we've done in Botswana in a previous job, a hunting block takes around about 5 years to settle down. So that's the sort of scope of our project. And we've seen amazing changes in the animal dynamics over that period of time. Yeah? So, as I said, yeah, we're going to put up a small camp there in June. We'll start operating there, and at this stage we're going to keep it very simple. It's going to be along the sort of style of a migration camp in the Serengeti, for those who are familiar with that, and just 4 tents. So it's 1 car, 1 boat, 1 walking guide, and kind of, I think at this stage, more sort of exclusive use than anything else. But it's very much in its development phase, and so, you know, we're open for any kind of questions or bookings that you might want to have, and we're extremely flexible in trying to make it happen at this stage. We really just want to get it off the ground. We do obviously have seed funding from our investors, which help the project go, but the more tourism we can get in there, the better the security of the area will become. So we'll have the small camp of 4 guest tents, and it really is a safari with a difference, because the whole focus is based on the research project itself and the engagement within that project. We also have 2 small trails camps, so you could offer, we can offer multi-day walking safaris, so you could sort of leapfrog and actually keep fly camping for, well, as long as you want. There's 7,000 square kilometers of space, and so very much a kind of, I don't know, maybe going back in time slightly to an original safari. And, you know, we have boating, canoeing, sports fishing, and just, yeah, at this stage, extremely flexible and trying to get whatever support we can into the area. So, yeah, eco-research tourism, it's really interesting. So for the first 3 years, we couldn't call it research tourism, sort of a government issue where they actually have never allowed the concept. But of late, the person that we actually started this project with has become the Director General of the Tanzanian Wildlife Research Institute, so very much the lead figure in that area. And he has changed some of the ruling where it's now very much a possibility to talk about research and tourism in the same sentence. And so we have actually now got permission to bring in tourists. Prior to this, in the last 2 years, we've only had donors, but now we can do normal tourism in the area, which is a massive change in the dynamics of Tanzania, where before it was a complete no-go to even discuss bringing guests that could engage with the research product. So we've had several colouring expeditions. These are actually our first guests that we got on to the Lion project. So these people were, some were from England and some were from America. And really, that's what it's about. Joining the researchers, as you can see there, the guests get to engage with the animal. They can draw blood. They can help put the collar on, and then obviously will receive updates and almost become like a friend of that lion and understand what it's doing and where it's moving. And so to date, we've put on 5 lion collars with some intermediate success. Unfortunately, one of our lions we think was involved in some sort of a poaching incident. Another one died. We think it might be a crocodile because it stopped moving on the edge of the river and then it never moved again, and we were not able to retrieve the collar. But the remaining lions have been, it's been an interesting challenge because of the density of the Miombo woodland. Quite often we just don't get any readings from them. So the lions will disappear for a couple of days and then pop up again on the satellite program, so we can re-identify them. But yeah, very much an engaged product. And once these people interact with an animal like that, it really becomes close to home. And we're often getting messages like, how is that lion doing and where is it going and all of that. So it really draws in a kind of bond with the guest and our project. So yeah, we will be starting boating in June. It's going to be quite an interesting process because Usangu is very much a flood regime. So we're going to have some months where there'll be plenty of water to boat in, and then other months where there'll be a very sort of small channel that will boat up and down. But the boating is going to provide a very interesting angle. Lots of elephants in the swamp during the day, and obviously things like hippos and crocodiles. And just a nice experience to be able to boat across a wetland that is massive. It's, kind of looks almost more like the Makharikari pans than anything else. There are parts where you cannot even see the other edge of this great expanse. Obviously, walking safaris is a big part of what we're trying to do. As I said, getting a little bit more back into kind of an old school type safari, and multi-day walking is very much an option. And what we do on the project is we pay TANAPA for long walking, which means that we then have the ability to walk from the vehicle and walk as many times as you want in a day. So if you're driving along and you find a nice herd of elephants or something like that, you can stop the car and walk out and engage with them. So really walking, one of the big focuses of the area, but obviously if you have people that don't want to walk, then we just stay in a car or a boat. So we do sort of cover every angle there. And canoeing is going to be also very interesting for us. So it hasn't been done in Ruaha before, and yeah, we really look forward to sort of when the flood is at its highest. It'll be very safe to canoe around there because there'll be places where you won't even come across hippos or anything like that because the water will be a bit too shallow for them, but perfect for canoeing itself. So yeah, in the last year we've had sport fishing and canoeing approved from our project's perspective in Ruaha, which been a lot of fish in Ruaha since it's been a national park. So some quite kind of groundbreaking stuff. And obviously the fishing is also part of our research project, where we are trying to understand river system health, and we've used a couple of indicator species, and one of them is the tigerfish. So if you have any people who are interested in fishing, they come and join the project and catch fish for a difference, right? And tag them and release them and become of the project in that way as well. So relationship building in all of these areas is very important, and Asilia does have a great history in terms of places like Kogatende in the northern Serengeti, where we were pioneering through there long before any tourists were around. And these areas, when they don't have a lot of visitors, they have quite a strong poaching presence. And so our approach has been to go straight to those villages first, understand sort of what their needs are, and then start straight away to build the relationship with them. So we have last year donated about 75 desks to the school of Madibira village, which is the nearest village. Prior to that, there were, I think, 60 people in a classroom all sitting on the floor. So we obviously thought that was a very big need, and we have subsequently employed 6 people. My directive to our staff was to go and find 6 of the top poachers in the area and bring them in. Obviously, people don't admit that they are in the top 6 poachers in the area, but yeah, we've got 6 people who have joined the project and will be trained up by us in various aspects. But coming from that background, they really understand what would be the movement of poachers and will aid magnificently in the overall sort of conservation strategy of the area. And so that's really what we're doing, is providing employment and training and trying to upskill the local people. So our intention is to have 1/3 of our staff from the local areas working in the Usangu project. And obviously when we're doing this, we drag people like TANAPA along with us, and there's a lot more collaboration and a lot more work that the private sector can help TANAPA with, particularly in community engagement. And then, to talk about our relationship with TANAPA, a lot of what we do is upskilling them. So we unfortunately found a poisoning incident in the project area. Actually, one of our sable antelope died at the poisoned waterhole that they had created. And this is quite a big problem, because obviously tidying that up is critical, because that poison remains in the land. And so we brought up an expert from South Africa, and TANAPA managed to get 20 of their sort of ecologist, conservationist people in there, and we did a 1-week training program. And that's kind of the plan of the PPP with regards to our engagement with TANAPA. We don't want to be, let's say, African parks who are actually doing the conservation work. We want to help TANAPA do their work better. And that's kind of the focus of ours on the conservation side. And as we discussed, a lot of engagement with the local community and training and upskilling these people. And really, the main sort of tourism hubs in the safari industry are more in northern Tanzania. And so these people are kind of underexposed in many ways. And as I said, our choice is to make sure that we are growing people from the local communities, as opposed to bringing in people with pre-existing skills from other areas. So what is the conservation potential of Usangu? Well, it's pretty incredible in terms of having the blank canvas, like I said before, but the habitat is ideal for elephant and other keystone species. It is a Ramsar International recognized birding area. As I said, a unique species composition, kind of like a combination of Southern Africa with East Africa. And just a couple of very interesting species in there, like the fact that topi doesn't occur anywhere else in Ruaha, and is not in Selous or Katavi or any of these places, but only occurs in this wetland. So really quite an interesting scenario there. And obviously, wetlands are diverse by their nature, and some of the most endangered environments on Earth. So a big part of the biodiversity audit is obviously the GPS collaring. As I said, we have a total of 10 collars that have successfully been deployed, predominantly on the roan and sable, and of late the lion collars that I previously mentioned. And that's obviously an ongoing project. Due to, as I said, some of the collar issues, we're actually going to be resetting the project. So the proposal's been handed into the ministry, and we're going to start again, using the sort of school fees that we paid over the last couple of years to do the project better. And one of them is actually the collars and how they work in the Myombo woodland. So basically, almost all of these collaring exercises, which we'll be doing, are going to be happening all over again. So a really good time. If you have any guests who you think would be very interested in joining that, then please communicate with us. And it's kind of a bit ad hoc at the moment, but as long as we have interested people coming in, we have the connections with TAWIRI to get the right veterinary people in place, and we run that safari. So we have done, the small mammals have been surveyed. Interestingly, we found a shrew which no one could identify, and that has been sent off to a university in the United States for some more genetic analysis, looking at the DNA. So potentially we might have uncovered a new small mammal. We've done the dry season bird counts. We've done vegetation and ecozone mapping. And the camera trap survey was a very interesting one. So we had 120 kilometers of camera traps. So we had 60 camera traps 2 kilometers apart from each other. And we put the camera traps in the bush. We didn't put them on any of the roads, because roads can often give you a sort of false reading, because animals obviously prefer to use the roads to walk on. And we managed to record every single animal that's ever been found in Ruaha, including a previously unrecorded grazing, which is a small antelope, kind of about the size of a duiker. So we have the Sharps grazing now on the list in Ruaha. But as you can see, we've got everything there. I mean, an amazing shot on the bottom right of 2 leopards looking into the camera there. But really, every single mammal that should be there is there. And of course, unfortunately, as you see down the bottom there, also some cattle and some still encroachment going on there. So, the more people we bring in, the more presence we have, the more difficult it becomes for these people to encroach into the park itself. So what are the conservation threats? Bushmeat, ivory, fish, and traditional medicine. I mean, it's really quite interesting to see how these guys operate. So when they come into the park, they come with bicycles, and the first thing they'll do is set up various nets, and then move on to other activities, including gold mining. It's pretty interesting. We found a gold mine the other day, which is really just guys digging with the spade and grabbing aggregate and then kind of sorting it out. And so there's the presence of gold in there as well. So quite an interesting kind of multi-tiered approach to let's say poaching in the way. One of the biggest threats is the water extraction upstream, and unfortunately rice fields, I think, as probably most of you know, require a huge amount of water. And so the main river systems are being diverted to aid in the irrigation of the rice farms. And, the drying of the Great Ruaha River has massive negative consequences, not only from a conservation perspective. Obviously, the Ruaha moves then into the Selous as well. But there are several hydroelectric plants along the course of this river. So also of national importance to the country to try and keep this wetland in as pristine position as possible. And as I said, currently there's absolutely zero income in Usangu for the national parks or the local communities. So it really is kind of key to getting everything going by having more of a presence and a tourism product in the area. And yeah, one of the interesting things is the cattle encroachment. They're eating all the floating vegetation, and this causes a massive increase in the evaporation rate. And you'll see on the slide coming up just now, basically the shrinking of this wetland over the last few years. So really one of the other goals that we are working towards is to having some kind of an aerial presence. So we, pre-corona, were going to be buying a small airplane called a Bathawk that we would use for our census work, but also to report back any sort of incidents that we might be able to see from the air, take a GPS coordinate of that and get the TANAPA rapid armed response into that area. And this is still part of the program that we will be going forward with. So we will be procuring this airplane probably in the course of this year. As I said, we did this whole poisoning training, which was extremely well received. We had 20 people from the 3 different parks, Katavi, Mikumi, and Ruaha. And, as I said, basically the biggest thing there is how to clean these things up and get rid of the poison and all the soil that's been poisoned around it in a professional way that leaves no sort of potential dangers down the line. So there is the slide that I was talking about. If you have a look at the different sort of colors there, in 1991, this wetland was almost twice the size that you find today, and just steadily decreasing in size 2000, 2006. And obviously we don't have a latest satellite image, but I think it's shrunk even further than that. So again, something needs to be done and needs to be done quite soon to protect this wetland. So what is our conservation plan? So obviously the community and community awareness of what's going on in the area is ongoing, and our Aiden, one of our staff, is now pretty much full-time on engaging with this community and drumming up support from their side. Again, not doing TANAPA's work, but supporting TANAPA in combating wildlife crime through resources, training, upskilling. And then, yeah, basically also to monitor the biodiversity and the populations of animals. And the long-term goal is obviously to generate sustainable income to support the project expansion. And yeah, the surveillance capabilities, and most importantly is a sustained presence in Usangu. So every time we take guests there, we have several TANAPA rangers join us. And the more that we can do that, the more obviously poaching incidents can be found out and really become a sort of deterrent and keep everyone just outside of the park boundary. And I think that's it for me. Obviously, ready for a few questions. And yeah, thank you so much for the time. And yeah, I think this is an amazing project. And I think going forward, you know, how does tourism look? I think this fits right into the isolated space and, you know, traveling with a purpose. And that's our intention. Our intention is to protect this area as best we can and make it a sustainable area for TANAPA, for the Ruaha National Park itself, and again, you know, making space available for other tourism operators who are similarly minded. You know, we can't do 6,000 or 7,000 square kilometers by ourselves. So this is not a selfish product. We are readying this area for tourism, not only Asilia.
Thanks, Brandon. That was great and super informative. I think everyone listening in will agree on that. There are some questions, so perhaps I can just work my way through them and direct the ones to you that I don't know how to answer myself.
Sure.
So kicking off, the first one is: will there be any special photographic hides or opportunities for wildlife photographers? I guess in part I can answer that in the sense that we don't yet have any photographic hides established at this point. But is that something perhaps we might look at in the future?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, it's actually something I hadn't even really thought of. You know, hides in national parks are not super common in East Africa, in Tanzania anyway. But yes, why not? I'm already thinking of like a sort of underground sunken hide. So thanks for that question. It's sparked an idea in my head. But yes, certainly, you know, the photographic opportunities are pretty amazing as they are now anyway. It's just a unique looking area in itself. But yes, certainly something we'll entertain.
Great. Someone's asked, given the global downturn in tourism as a result of COVID-19 pandemic, do you think that a research project / trying to secure an area based on tourism revenue is viable? And again, I think, you know, we got down into Usangu already 5 years ago. We've been looking at this as a project space. It's something we've been invested in and working on, even though it hasn't yet come into its fruition as a tourism product. And it would be a shame, I think, to give up on it at this point. Yeah, I think regardless of what happens with the pandemic, there's space for it, right?
Correct, and I think where our model is very interesting, and you know, we've done a lot of modeling, trying to work with the government to get sort of other opportunities in the more remote parts of southern Tanzania. Is what we are doing is we are trying to practice conservation and research, but at the same time looking at the tourism model. And yeah, I mean, we have seed funding to carry on with the project, irrespective of whether we have any tourists or not. But you can't make these places work without sustainable, you know, income. Even the wealthiest people in the world, you know, don't want to just keep giving money. So at some point we need to make the area generate revenues for, particularly actually for Ruaha National Park Authority themselves to be able to operate better in that area. So yeah, I mean, because of the pandemic, it doesn't mean we don't stop trying to do tourism, because actually tourism is the only way that to really save these areas. If that answers the question. Yeah,
absolutely. One here that I can probably handle is, will the camp be open year round or will there be annual closures? I think at this point we're looking to operate the camp from the 1st of June through to the 31st of January on an annual basis, closing for the wetter, rainier period of the year when it is probably just going to be too wet. So yeah, that's the plan at this point. And Danny's asking, how much does it cost to visit? Does it have to be private? So at this point, we're looking at a rack rate of around $600 per person per night. That is for your kind of FIT offering with your full board, all-inclusive drinks, and including the kind of basic activities on offer within the park itself. There will be then the collaring options, which at this point are still a little vague, but we plan to have a helicopter-based offering as well as a vehicle-based offering, and the price differentiation between the two will obviously reflect that. It will be a non-commissionable price for the collaring package itself, purely because that amount doesn't go into our pockets at all. It goes all back to the veterinary services, the cost of the medication for the darting process, the cost of the GPS collars. So it needs to be a non-commissionable item from that perspective. Do you have anything further to add on to that, Brandon, or does that cover it?
No, you covered it.
Cool.
And I think what we're trying to do is not make it exclusive by price, and I think $600 a night excluding park fees is probably on the lower end of any of our other products. And it's really for us more about the presence than, John and I have been talking about. One of the things, presence, not profit, at this stage.
Yeah. Danny, the other half of your question there was, does it have to be private? And what we plan to do is, if you book a collaring packaged itinerary, then it will be on a private experience basis, because obviously the clients in camp have paid that additional fee to do the collaring experience. So we want to have them have a private experience. But outside of collaring packages, the camp will be available on FIT use as well.
Yeah.
Question from Jim Bob. Usangu looks awesome. Is there anything that you have seen or found from doing the wildlife audit that you weren't expecting to find? That's definitely one for you, Brandon.
Yeah, sure. So obviously the Grazing never been recorded in Ruaha before was an interesting one to have a whole mammal that no one's ever seen there. And yeah, this shrew, this unidentified shrew that we found in our small mammal survey, that has gone off for genetic analysis. So yeah, those kind of things. And we haven't even got into amphibians yet. And the fish study is also going to be starting up again in June. So I expect to find a few more things, particularly in the kind of amphibian area as well.
Another question here says, this is incredible work. Thanks for that. Is there a way to get involved? I imagine the best way to get involved is to try and send clients this way once the tourism product is actually operational. Apart from that, I guess platforms like Asilia Giving, if someone wanted to make a donation towards the work being done. Are there any other opportunities in Usangu for people to get involved?
I suppose by coming as a tourist, you are then involved in the project, right? Because you're engaging with even if you're not doing a collaring episode, we still need to do things like ground truthing, which is going out with the telemetry set and actually, finding that lion and, making sure that it's, all still in good condition and stuff like that. So any visit to the area, you are then part of the project.
Yeah, sure. And do you know at this point which guides will be based at Usangu?
So it's Doug. We only have one guide there. As I said, we only have one car, one boat. So it's kind of, it all fits into the only needing one guide. And Doug is our, he's been the manager at Jabali Ridge for a while, but he's our guy on the ground, helping us on the ground side of the project. Obviously, he's a walking qualified guide, and at this stage, it will be him who runs all these trips. Yeah.
And a question also directed at you. You've traveled extensively in Africa. Where would you compare Usangu to, and is Usangu your favorite, and why?
So where would you compare it to? So it's kind of similar to the Savuti Marsh, but about 20 times bigger. I just like it because it's a very different type of area. Just the whole scenery. It's immense. It's large, and it's just underexplored. There's really sort of no one's ever really done much in there. There was a bit of human encroachment many years ago, but that's sort of been moved outside of the park. Obviously, poaching side of it, they still come in there. But yeah, just, a wetland. I have a lot of time that I spent in the Okavango Delta, and so any kind of wetland gets me quite excited, and I like boating. And so yeah, it's special. I mean, Selous is also pretty special as well. So both of these areas, in terms of their vastness, and yeah, they need the need to protect them. They're under threat, these places, and without some kind of sustainable income revenue for the national parks, people, they start to get a little bit forgotten about, and that would be an absolute tragedy if we lost a wetland like Usangu.
Absolutely. A question here I can probably answer: will the camp be on set arrival and departure times or dates? And the answer for that is no, not at this point anyway. The FIT offering will obviously be as and when clients want to turn up, they can. At this point, while tourism is still kind of in its infantile stages, the collaring activities will be on demand based on the client request, and then we will then need to converse with the veterinarians and the park officials and TAWIRI to find out if we can make it happen on the requested date. Hopefully, once things have matured a little, we'll be able to say these are the dates at which point we'll be offering helicopter or vehicle-based collaring activities, so that we can market those more effectively, put them out into the world, and let people know that if they book for this, they can see however far in advance what collaring activities will be available when.
Yeah. At this stage, we have a dedicated veterinarian to the project, so we're quite flexible in making sure that it can happen.
Okay, that is good news.
Yeah.
One for you, Brandon. Do those wanting to participate in the collaring need to have any specific ability? For example, are specific fitness levels required? Is there a lot of walking involved?
No, actually, virtually no fitness needed whatsoever. Our investor, a guy called Jim Ratcliffe, he did have to wrestle at probably even that Ruaha antelope that you see on that picture there. I think it was that one. Because one of the challenging things is that you can't get a ground crew in there because the terrain is just, it's impossible. So everyone's in the helicopter, right? So if you're in that helicopter, yeah, you have to get out and help sort of get the animal down and put the blindfold over its eyes. But yeah, I mean, you land right next to the animal, and when you're doing the vehicle collarings, you're also doing it almost from the vehicle as well. So no fitness required, just a nice adventurous spirit.
Yeah, brilliant. And at this point, do you have a highlight or a favorite part of this project to date, apart from obviously that unidentified shrew that we found so far? Does anything stand out for you?
Yeah. I tell you, just being next to some of those male lions, I mean, it's incredible how big they are. And interestingly, they all have very small manes. We don't have any big maned lions out there. And when you speak to the research people, the vets, they say that's got to do with hunting. But the sheer size of the animal is incredible. I mean, these are very big lions. They just don't have big manes. Yeah, there's something humbling about standing next to a lion of that size, and you're just kind of getting a real feel for just how big and powerful those animals are. So, yeah, I think the collaring expeditions are my highlight, and also the fact that we're starting on this fishing research, which is if our next project, what's coming up next, we've applied to run a similar project in what is now the Ruaha National Park, in an area called Msolwa. It's about 4,700 square kilometers, a little bit smaller than Usangu, but certainly big enough. And hopefully that gets approved. And then we'll have, 2 projects running, and they follow a very similar course. One of the interesting things that we've applied for in this latest project as well, and it's part of the Reset Usangu, is to do a census. So we are trying to measure the change in the animal dynamics from the end of hunting, which is obviously what's just happened in Selous, over a 5-year period. So that's never really been recorded in Tanzania, and that's one of the big motivating factors of our investor. He's a little bit against hunting, and this is just wonderful information that we can assist the government in having on hand. That you started with hunting with 10 buffalo, and after 5 years you've got 500 buffalo, or that's kind of the stuff that we are wanting to record. What are the dynamic changes in animal numbers over a 5-year period?
Yeah, it sounds fascinating.
Yeah.
Another question here: how have the local community reacted to TAWIRI and the Asilia presence and the work in the area? I imagine the school's very happy with the desks that they've received.
Yeah.
Have we had any other feedback or feelings from the local communities?
Yeah, so it's quite interesting that no one's really ever engaged with them, including even TANAPA. So when we first arrived there, they thought we were TANAPA. They thought we were the National Parks Authority. And yeah, it took a lot of talking under a tree, as you can see on the bottom right there, with the community to get them to understand what we're doing. And they said that they had had 1 or 2 visitors before, but the people never came back. So the fact that we then went back with all these desks, I think, kind of we put our money where our mouth is. The fact that we've employed 6 people from the community. So, you've got to start somewhere in getting this messaging out. And we've started that process, but there's a high level of sort of suspicion and, what are you guys doing here kind of thing. And a lot of unknown, people don't know anything about tourism there. They don't know much about, why people come to these parks. So yeah, it's an ongoing process there. So we're visiting every 3 months, just meeting the elders again and, reintroducing ourselves and letting them know that we're around. And yeah, hopefully that's also one of the ways to, get into helping limit the poaching as much as possible is through education and exposure. So that's really the plan, to keep going. We'll also be running our Twende Porini program, which is a program based on bringing these kids into the camp and just showing them what the other side of the coin looks like, right? Because as far as these villagers know, elephants ruin their crops, lions kill their cows. So these are animals that they don't necessarily have a high regard for. And just to show them from the other side, what these animals can do for them. So yeah, it's going to be a journey, but an interesting one.
Yep, for sure. Lene is asking how many nights or days would we recommend guests spend there? And I guess a minimum of 3 nights is the short answer, in order to allow sufficient time to do all the activities and hopefully spend your second night out in a trails camp somewhere if you want to do some walking. But with the mobile nature of those trails camps, I guess 4 or 5 nights, depending if people want to do a lot of walking within the itinerary, if that's what they're coming down there for, is easily achievable.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there's just so much to do, right? There's boating, canoeing, walking, multi-day walking, game drives, night drives, fishing. So it's got every possible activity that's on offer in any national park in Tanzania, and got a sort of a bit more of a Selous type angle with the boating opportunities. So yeah, I would say anything less than 3 nights would be too short. It's also just such a big place. It's about a 3.5 hour drive from Jongamero airstrip. So it's out there.
Yeah.
So yeah, 3 nights minimum for sure.
Someone's asking about agent fam trips. It would be great to get an agent fam trip down there, especially as we expand our offering in the south. If we, at the moment, our typical southern Tanzania fam trip just goes into Selous and then into Ruaha to go to Jabali and Kwala. So if we've got the capacity to tack on 2 or 3 nights onto a fam trip, I think it would be great to get agents down into Usangu. While it's
we should actually talk about that, John, because if there's that fam trip in June and November or whatever it is, the camp should be up, so maybe we can pop in there.
Yeah, I mean, we could consider looking at that as an extension. Obviously, that fam trip itself, the dates are obviously fixed, and most agents joining it have already, I think, probably organized flights and what have you. But yeah, going forward, that's definitely something we can look at. Yeah,
the problem is it's not really a place that you can drive to and sort of look at and then drive back. It's just too far. It takes about, I think it's about 7 hours from Jabali to Usangu. So yeah, you can't do it in one day. Yeah, but for sure, we'd love to entertain. At this stage, we just want to get as much interest drummed up as we can. So yeah, of course, having agents there would be amazing.
Yep. From a minimum age perspective for children, I think we're looking at 12 years as the minimum, because that's where walking pretty much starts, according to TANAPA guidelines. And could we have sleeping in the hide to give the ultimate experience, so we get the best light in the day? So that's from our same agent that asked the photography question earlier. So something to consider. If we do build a hide, could guests sleep in it in order to get that early morning photograph?
Yeah, but we've got these cubes. I don't know if anyone's seen them, but we've made these shade cloth cubes. So it kind of feels like you're sleeping out anyways, and those are highly mobile. And so, you'd pretty much be sleeping under the stars with a 360-degree view in either direction. So, absolutely, you will be able to be in whichever space you want to be around sunset. If it's on the river, if it's in the Miombo, definitely doable at this stage. And we don't even need a hide for that. We just put our trails camp out wherever you want to be, actually. Yeah,
it sounds like a good plan. And then this looks like our final question says, "Hi Brandon," it's from Paul T. "Hi Brandon, great work. Have you had any engagement from the big rice farms in Ihefu?"
No, so the problem is they're outside of the park, and we can't have any real influence on them. I know that World Bank has been engaging with them to try and better the practices of diverting the water upstream Ihefu, but the rice projects that were inside the Usangu Game Reserve, you can sort of see where they were, but they're not active at the moment. The biggest issue at the moment is obviously bushmeat poaching, but also cattle. A lot of cattle coming in to the area, and that's the nice thing when you're doing a helicopter collaring or something like that. The guys are buzzing around in a helicopter, and you chase some animals out or whatever, and it's just that kind of thinking on their side that hey, something's going on here, and these people are flying around with armed TANAPA people in tow. So unfortunately we don't have much influence on the it's difficult to get into an argument with people when they're producing food for a country that's relatively poor. So I think even the government really battles with engaging or changing the behavior of some of those rice projects outside of the park.
Yeah, understandable. Okay, so that's the last of our questions. So just a quick wrap up to say thank you. Our last seminar is later today, where James Denny is going to be looking at our Asilia innovations. So please do join us for that later today if you can. Also, a quick reminder that at the end of this Asilia virtual trade show, we will be emailing out a quiz and the opportunity to win Asilia bed nights. So please do watch your emails for that. And lastly, thanks again for taking the time to join us. And we look forward to welcoming you into Usangu in the not too distant future. Thank you, Brandon, and thanks to everyone that's attended.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, everybody. Really appreciate your time, and send us some guests and come yourselves.
Absolutely.
Super. All right.